Good morning, good morning, good morning, and good morning, good morning, good morning. All right, welcome. I haven't been on live in like far too long. Feels like it's just been forever, which is okay because we have to do things. All right, to welcome everyone. Come ye, come all. Is that the saying? I think so. Hey, Brian. Good morning. All right. Huh. So I was thinking about how to navigate the call. Hey, Earl. And there's not so there's not much to talk about at the moment, and that's purposeful. But let's go over what happened, right? So what's important to know. Hey, good morning. Yeah, I know I actually cut my hair yesterday. Well, actually, so that's kind of funny. So everything that we speak about has the benefit of two facts. One, I I'm certifiably not insane, as I have successfully achieved my psychological evaluations and risk assessments, and I am completely above board. In fact, I think it says Anthony is logical and sensible. Um, he does not. He does not present as a danger to himself or anyone. Thinking is logical, sensible, and reasonable. And the reason why my hair was longer was because I had gotten a follicle test, right? In which case they test your system for everything. Now, mind you, I'm going through the world's worst divorce, right? And I'm not allowed to speak of it. But what's relevant to this call, in a bit of a half funny way, but also half like it does make sense, um, there is absolutely nothing in my system at all. So for what it's worth, you are looking and talking to someone who is above board in all of it and has not had a substance even as traditional or as frequent, or not frequent, but as regular as alcohol, right? So I'm just the pillar of sensible thinking and healthy, non non what's the word, when you're non-influenced uh, substances. So that's a good thing. Secondly, what isn't now, here's where it gets into a little dice, right? So I need everyone to actually like hear what I'm saying because I can't say everything out loud. First of all, let's start with this. I would sooner die than anyone get taken advantage of. So just don't ever forget that, right? Everything that's happening is for the benefit of all three of my children, Rhino, Christian, and Morris, right? Okay. And you're Rhino. I'm Rhino. We're all Rhino, right? We're Rhino. So let that sink in for a second. 100%. Yeah. On everything of every substance ever. Okay. So Rhino Bucks, how do I do the timeline? So Rhino Bucks was created September 8th, 2022. I got married December 11th, 2021. Rhino Bucks is worthless. It's complete bankrupt. There is no money there. There's nothing there. It's dead. It's zero. End of story. Okay. No one asked me a question. Do not ask me a question. I'm not answering any. Just understand that. Now that we understand Rhino Bucks is worth zero, here's the next sentence. I recognize that I owe those who owned Rhino Bucks money because I, of a high moral and ethical blah blah blah, will never take money from someone and let them lose money. So I'm personally recognizing the debt that I owe people, not because you owned Rhino Bucks. It's not a conversion of Rhino Bucks. It's not a anything of Rhino Bucks equals debt. It's me saying, I know that you, Mary, invested X amount into Rhino Bucks and that went to zero. I feel bad about that. Oh, you invested $100? Well, Mary, I'm making the independent decision based on myself, on my finances, that I don't like that you lost $100 in believing in Rhino Bucks, which went to zero. I reserve the right to reconcile that claim out of my personal whatever. And the way I plan on doing that, Mary, is I would like to reconcile that claim, which is not a real claim. There's no court of law that has a claim. I recognize the claim that you, Mary, have lost money in Rhino Bucks. So I want to go ahead and give you twice the amount that you lost because I appreciate you, Mary. I'm sure there's a Mary in here. This isn't to actually Mary. This is to anyone. I don't even know why Mary's the name I'm coming up with, but whatever. And furthermore, since Mary, you're fantastic, and since I've always believed us to be in a Mother Mary, yeah, and since I always believed us to be a big family, and families don't separate, well, real families don't separate, but that's another story for another day. I don't ever want to prosper or ever recognize something so great on the backs of those that I was with while saying, oh, too bad you have no piece of that. So, Mary, the money that you lost in Rhino Bucks that went to zero, before it went to zero, represented X% of Rhino Bucks. Okay, I'm going to keep that number in my head, and when I speak to you, Mary, I'm going to offer you a percent of the patent in all business going forward. That is not going to be a conversion. It's not commensurate. Rhino Bucks is dead, zero, done, blah. But I will recognize what your percentage was. And in that conversation we will have in the future, I will make sure that you're still a participant in everything going forward because, Mary, I love you so much. And Mary is everyone. Everyone is Mary. If you've ever put $1 into Rhino Bucks, you are Mary. Okay. Now, obviously, I can't speak any more on that. I think I've done a good job and kind of like you could read between the lines. And if you ask me what lines, I have no idea. I have no idea what you're talking about. So that's that. Okay. As it pertains to the actual patent and everything going forward, the provisional has been awarded. The non-provisional is officially filed and is officially in pending status with the United States Patent Office. Our patent team, which I'm still not disclosing who they are, but let me say something to that. If I was going to a doctor for quadruple bypass surgery, you know what I wouldn't do? I wouldn't use a coupon. If I was looking for sushi, you know what I wouldn't do? Go to the discount place. So without telling you, the patent team, because there is a non-disclosure agreement, and I don't want to, I can tell it to you now. The problem is, I say it to you, and whoever listens to this, you get one knucklehead that starts berating those people, and then for what, right? So I have to ask myself, is the information that I'm withholding purposely, does it rise to a material level where I'm taking away from someone? And the answer is no, right? The patent team could be Mickey Mouse and company, right? So it doesn't really matter who they are. What matters is what I'm saying to be true. Now, well, Ant, if we don't know who the patent team, how do we know anything to be true? Well, there's always going to be, we're always going to get to a point where we're going to be able to look back, right? So when this gets to, okay, the patent is filed or it didn't get filed or blah, blah, blah. Anthony, you know what? Who did you work with? Show me the paperwork. Like, there's going to be a time where everyone's going to be able to see that stuff, and then they'll be able to say, oh, okay, that does click. And ideally, when the non-provisional gets awarded, all right, guys, we use this team because they're the best. Now, that being the case, our team was patent agents for their entire career. They left the patent office in 2001 to start their own venture in California. Since 2001, they have been responsible for, I think it's 800, 700 or 800. I think it's 800. Thanks, Andrew. Host and panelists. Um, I always, sometimes people write and it only goes to host and panelists. Goes to everyone. Everything's great, but it's we're in this together. It's not like just me. But anyway, so let's say 700, right? Whatever. 700 patents have been awarded because of their work. So it's not like they're just new to the patent thing, nor did we ever think to take the shortcut or to find the discount patent broker. When we first filed our provisional patent, I said to the team, guys, this is quite important. Like, I know the value of our patent. Right now, I might be right or wrong, but I believe that I knew. Therefore, if you believe that you know the value of your patent to be like this big astronomical number, it stands fair to reason at that moment, guys, take a second look. I don't care, I'll pay for it. And we had to pay more. Because the patent team that quoted us the pricing was that they did a search of the database once. I then paid an extra $625 for them to do a second search and use more keywords. What happened as a result of those two searches was that A, the patent that we were submitting did not exist, but there's three metrics that your patent or patentability is measured on. The second one is innovative process, in which case I don't want to say failed, that's the wrong word, but we were below par. Meaning, if that was not met, then we would not be awarded the patent because you didn't innovate anything. Like, for instance, you can't patent crossing the road because everyone does it. You can't patent crossing the road. So when we filed for the non-provisional, we had to do some adjusting to what the patent was, add more to it. Okay. When adding more to it, we then released and included the proprietary algorithm that we built out for the intent scoring system. The intent scoring system, now there's so much. Okay, so this is where it gets like bigger. Okay, so first of all, what is the patent? So the patent is a user, a single person, and a closed-end marketplace with the liaison being the AI persona. The idea being that I can take this phone and or any gizmo or gadget, right? Or like this soap bottle or something, I can have an object that is home to my AI persona. That AI persona is accountable, think of my the AI persona is accountable to just me. I and my AI persona, through engagement, create a more complementary persona because the persona is self-learning. In pursuit or by reason of self-learning, it then is able to identify, able to identify to a higher degree of certainty, to a higher probability, my intents, either recognizing my intent as it happens or being able to predict my intent before it happens. So like, for instance, when you're with your loved one and they're like, let me guess, you want Chinese tonight. And you're like, how did you know that? Well, every time you have a real SHIT day in a training outside, you want Chinese food. That's the goal, right? Can we get there? Obviously, that's a very innovative process. So what we did was release the proprietary algorithm, which in that email I sent you contains it. Actually, I don't need to go. You have it. It's very, very, you know what? Let me just see. Stay with me. Where do I have it? I have it somewhere. I think this is what I'm looking for, maybe. Okay, stay with me. And it's funny because I know you can see me because I'm looking at this computer right now. All right, come on. Okay, here it is. So let's just do something real quick. Okay. Oh, you don't have it never. Okay. So the email that we sent out, which by the way, not a lot has changed. I don't want to say that because then it's like, Ant, you're sending us 60-page emails and things change. No, a lot has evolved. Like there's a process that's become bigger. But in doing so, so Ted's algorithm that we had to include for the innovative process. So simply listen, learn, contextualize, feel, decide. Seems pretty simple, right? Well, how does it actually do that? This is the actual algorithm. Now, obviously, you don't know what that means, and that's okay. But this is how the calculations are done. As you go a little further, what do the calculations actually represent? So these are the letters. This is what they represent. Probability based on user personality type at time, T, behavioral analysis based on past user behaviors, specificity of expressed need, blah, 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 and then equals the final decision-making process, right? This is a little bit of an explanation, and this is a walkthrough. So if this equals this, how does that work? These are the variables. This is how the scoring system works. Great. Now, how do we refine it? There's a level 2, level 3, level 4 refinement that we have in the actual algorithm. I didn't include it in this because, hey, you don't want to give all the ingredients to the Big Mac sauce, right? As you continue, you can see then it's able to execute action because there is an autonomous feature in it as well. So there you go. So I want to get out of there because I don't want to continue on it. Okay. Here's how this works, because I'm thinking of the next thing that you don't even know that I'm thinking yet, because I'm going to share it with you. Okay. So for Ted to be able to give you a recommendation that Ted believes you're going to accept, it needs to learn you. It's learning you through your behavior. It's able to map and measure everything that you say and do in the context you say and do it, in the way you say and do it, the date you say and do, all of it. It then takes that and calculates when it can make a recommendation to you. When it makes these recommendations, it's making the recommendation on the self-calculated probability that you're going to say yes 95%. If and when you say yes, it then reinforces that calculation. If and when you say no, it then identifies why you said no, takes that variable, inputs it into the algorithm so that doesn't happen again. When you're saying yes 95% of the time to Ted's recommendations, for a rolling 90-day period that you say yes 95% of the time, 95% of the time, based on a particular niche, Ted then switches into autonomous mode. Ted will go ahead and instead of asking you, do you want Chinese food? If it believes with a 95% certainty that you're going to say yes, even down to the point of what you would say yes to, it will make that order for you. Okay. Now, what if you don't want Chinese food that night? Well, Ted's going to pay for it. Now, well, Ant, if Ted pays for everything, isn't this going to go bankrupt after a while? Well, yeah, if it does that all the time. But once it does that, it then, oh, you didn't want it? I was so wrong that I actually paid money, like money came out of Rhino to cover this for you. That's never going to happen again. So it becomes a very, very, very powerful variable to the algorithm that does not allow that to ever happen again. Okay. Take it to its next step, right? So when Ted reaches the point that 95% of the autonomous actions are accepted, what does Ted know about you? It knows you better than you know you. Now, the reason why we did it through autonomous action is not because we care about marketing. I could really give an SHIT about Ted's ability to know when you want Chinese food. I don't care even a little bit. But how do you ever gauge if someone knows you? Right? Like, for instance, how do I know that person ABC knows me? Is it because they know what I'm going to do during good times? Is it because they know what I'm going to do during bad times? Is it because they know what I'm going to do when no one's looking? Is it because they know how I react when things, like, how do you know someone? Well, the only real, so that's a philosophical debate, and I don't really know the answer to that. How do you know someone? But according to my beliefs, I think I think the best metric to gauge if someone knows someone is, can I put my hand in your bank account, take your money, use it to buy something on your behalf, deliver that thing to you while you're not even expecting it, and then you, upon finding it, say thank you to me. I don't know a higher level that's calculable. In fact, the only higher level I can think of is you getting pregnant and having a child together. And since there's absolutely no way that we're able to map and measure that, I think this is the strongest way to show that I know you. Okay. So what does that mean for what TED is? Well, it just becomes the best, most perfect marketing system ever in the history of the world. And I don't mean to use hyperbole. Like, I don't think it gets better than that. I just don't think it's even possible. You know, even when you're going to the grocery store and you're checking out, you're at the checkout counter and you're like, oh my God, gum. I want gum. What's impulse marketing? You're right there. You got money in your hand. You're waiting. There's gum. Okay, cool. How about guerrilla marketing, where someone's calling you, calling you, calling you? You got to do that. Okay. There's so many different types of marketing, but name one marketing where it's, I know you so well that I'm actually going to take your money out of your pocket. You don't even know I'm doing it because you've given me permission to do it. And I'm going to use it to buy you something that you don't even know you want yet, but I know you want it. And then when you see it, you're going to say thank you to me. Now, we could have the conversation, well, Ant, that's like really far out there. Like, I don't think we're getting there this year. That's fine. That's not the argument. That's not the value. Because we own the patent, as long as you believe at some point in some future somewhere that those numbers and the technology get to a point that you're able to map that, that's what we own. So whether TED can do that this year, next year, 10 years, that's not the conversation. The conversation is who owns that? And that's us. Okay. But that's not the big thing. Here's the big thing. So if you follow me and you say, well, Ant, I don't know if anyone's going to be able to do that this year or next year or whatever year, but I do agree that at the very least, I don't know how many other things are up there, but that's definitely in the top three, measurables of how you can determine if someone knows someone. In fact, if you're able to do that for someone, I feel quite comfortable that you know them very well. Now, I don't know if you know them better than their own mother does, but if you can put your hand in someone's pocket and 95% of the time they say thank you, and you've taken their money and bought them something that they didn't even know they wanted, and they walk into it and they say thank you, I think you can speak for that person. Perfect. And I'm sorry I keep doing this. I feel like it's like tells. I have the heat on. Anyway. And I say that because I'm cognizant of it. I just went jogging, so I'm like, like my skin doesn't feel as fresh as it might look, and it does actually look kind of good. Okay. Here's where it gets interesting. AI is not going back in the lantern, right? It's out. It's going to be a functional part of society for many years to come. In fact, one could make the real argument, and it would be quite reasonable to say AI has just begun. Okay. So what is AI? Right? So we're not getting into some philosophical, Anthony, like, enough, like, shut up. Artificial intelligence, we get that, right? So as of right now, it performs tasks. All right, TED, recite the Constitution to me in French. Okay, great, TED could do that. But these tasks are kind of like, do you remember when you were younger, the flip book? So you'd have a book with a bunch of pictures on it, and if you flipped it really quickly, it then looked like a movie, like the old Mickey Mouse cartoons. That's what AI is right now. It's just tasks. But when you put those tasks together in a high volume rapidity, it now performs a function because it's a bunch of tasks that are interconnected. So for instance, I want dinner. Well, how do I have dinner? Well, the task is I need to figure what I want, I need to shop for it, I need to open it, I need to know how to cook it, I need to prepare it, blah, blah, blah. These are a bunch of tasks. If you put them together, you created the function. You had dinner. So do we believe that technology, especially AI technology, is all of a sudden going to stop evolving? It's just going to stop at tasks? No, it's going to then start it's then going to start stacking tasks to a point that it's going to be doing functions, it's going to be a thing. So for instance, who remembers watching the Jetsons? I remember watching the Jetsons as a kid. You're going to have things do things. So it doesn't stand, it doesn't stand crazy to say, okay, hey, Ted, make me an egg omelet sandwich. Yeah, I want the mushrooms, hold the spinach, add feta cheese today. Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool, bye. And then it does it. Okay. So do we believe that's possible? Yes. Well, how can that thing learn you? So if I have that particular thing in my kitchen and this particular thing has the ability to learn me, well, then it's learning me because it's going to build the experience, right? Just like a relationship. If you want to have a relationship that is more than, the aesthetics and the blunt things, like, oh, you look pretty, I want to kiss you. Oh, we hungry, let's eat food. Oh, we want family, let's get pregnant, right? But if you want the nuanced things like, oh, I see that you're having a difficult day, why don't you tell me what happened and we'll stay in and let's do foot massages tonight, right? Like, the difference between example A and example B is the fact that there's a relationship. You're able to learn the individual, to learn what they want. So you then ask yourself again, is the AI going to stop? Is someone going to say, well, actually not someone, the collective society going to say, well, guess what? We have these things that are possible to do these things. We have these things that are possible to solve the epidemic of loneliness. We have these things that can make any person feel like they're in a crowded room because they now own 10 different humanoid robots that are in their home, blah, blah, blah. But we just don't think we should do it. No, because that would have to be a global initiative. And no one's going to tell me that the US is going to say no, but China's going to say, the technology is going to advance. Okay. So if it's going to advance in that fashion, it's going to be based on relationship building. Okay, that makes sense. Take it a step further. If I'm a product company, and software for that matter, so I'm making these AI humanoids. Imagine I'm making a humanoid robot, which Tesla does right now. They just haven't released it because they're still testing it. But I'm making these humanoid robots and I'm allowing, you can buy it from me and it needs to be trained for 5 hours a day for the first year. And these are the testings and blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. And within 2 years, you're going to have an actual humanoid robot that's going to be able to walk around the house and be exactly what you want them to be. Okay, great. What happened? You created it. Well, how did it get created? Well, they built it. But how is it so friendly to you? How does it know everything about you? Because you trained it. How did you train it? Because you gave it the opportunity, you spent the time with it that it knows you. How does it know you? Through the engagement. Well, what engagement? Well, it took stock of everything that you did. It was able to map and measure your behavior to equal what? Your intent. It's able to identify your intent through mapping and measuring your behavior on a calculated algorithm that allows it to self-learn. Oh, so wait a second. Okay, so let me get this straight. The thing that you have in TED is like the same exact thing these things are going to be doing in the future, but no one even knows that yet. Yeah, because now take it a step further. These companies that own these stupid robots that are doing all of these things, don't you think they want to make profit? Well, how do you make profit? Well, you have to mass produce these things. Well, how do you mass produce them? Well, it's easy. You put it in a factory and you make a whole bunch of. No, 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 Ant. That's not what I'm talking about. How do they're people have to afford them, and then they have to spend time learning them. Like, how can you ever mass produce these in a society? In fact, when Aurora walks by, it's different than when Ron walks by. It's different when Andrew walks by. How are these things going to interact with a random person so many times that each random person is going to have that same experience with them? Well, they'd have to have something universal. They would have to have some universal function, like a card or a code, and that would have to almost be like their consciousness. It'd be their personality, it'd be their DNA, it'd be their digital DNA, where it knows everything about a person, but it's protected within that person. But if that person consented to walking past something, or wanted to participate, or wanted to learn, or want to interact with any of these things, they can simply just say, beep. And then the thing would say, oh, I know this is Aurora. I know this is Ron. How do they know it? Because they have the access to your consciousness card, quote unquote, your TED card. What's a TED card? You know that algorithm that we just spoke about where we don't give an SHIT if it knows to buy you Chinese food, but we know that it knows you? That is what the TED card is. Meaning, in the future of advanced, whatever the F, and sorry, but whatever happens, there has to be some universal feature that allows individuals to interact with some mass production. Now, you can't say TED Talks because that's patented, but kind of, sort of, right? You need to have some type of universal feature that allows individuals that are all random to be able to succinctly and universally interact with in a scalable fashion. So say, for instance, you get to the point where you have humanoid robocops, right? Like cops and things. How do they know not to shoot you? How do they know anything? They couldn't, unless they were able to identify the individualness of the individual. Now, here's where it gets nutty, right? Well, Anthony, first of all, that sounds like it's so far in the future. I don't want to talk about it now. And maybe you're right. Like, maybe it's 10, 20, 30, 40. I have no idea. But I do know that when that time comes, corporations and government are going to have a solution far before consumers think of one themselves, right? Because where we're at right now in this evolution that's going forward is that the data that's compiled by corporations, whether it be your social media, or now it's going to be your AI footprint, or whatever it's going to be, is going to build a profile that they're going to own because it's their data. Okay. Governments are stupid and they don't know how to do anything about this, but they're voted in by people. Those people decide to vote them based on the spend that they have. So one politician has $100 million to spend and blah, blah, blah. That money comes from lobbyists. The lobbyists lobby on behalf of the elected officials because, like Robin Williams did in that one movie, they should just be like NASCAR people. They should have what they represent all over their bodies. So let's say Corporation ABC wants to move into town ABC. So they find a politician and say, hey, listen, we're going to get you elected, but there is a vote coming up on AI. We're going to help you write the bill, and we want to make sure that you understand it. So let's go through it now. Bob, Bob, Bob. Does this sound good to you? Okay, great. You're going to vote for this, and we're going to give you as much money as possible to make sure that this goes through. Okay, great. What did that bill actually say? Well, you know, all those like cameras that are all over the place, and law enforcement and body cameras and all of that nonsense. Well, that's going to aggregate the data that's then going to be shared with the corporation so that they can create a persona of you so that they can mass produce these things so that everyone has an individual experience. Because here's the problem. Corporations always act in their own interest, and that's not a problem. I think that's actually beautiful. To know who someone is a good thing, because when you don't know who someone is, you accidentally marry them. When you know who someone is, that is a good thing. Therefore, what's great about corporations is you know that they're disgusting vultures. What they care about is the bottom line, which is beautiful, because they're going to do anything it takes to make money. which is beautiful. Now, more times than not, they're going to try to do it in an ethical way because ethical stuff has a long-lasting business. But sometimes they don't do it that way. The point being, any way that they could come across that makes them money, they're going to do it. So when they get to the point that these products and features and services and hardware and software needs to be mass produced but cannot be mass produced because they're unable to interact with the audience, the citizenship, in such a scalable fashion unless they have some type of way to identify person from person from person, they're going to come up with that solution themselves. In fact, in China right now, they have a what's it called, a social credibility score, where there's cameras all over the place. Like, for instance, if you run a red light, the camera picks up your facial demographics, your biometrics. It then lowers your social score. It then puts billboards up all over the place that you're that person, and it restricts your bank account and restricts the things you can do. That's the way they ensure that everyone is acting in accordance with the societal whatever. If you think that that technology doesn't exist to come to the US, you're crazy. It's not that the US would ever allow that in a put a frog into boiling water, but the US is very good at sitting in water that heats up little by little. It was just 3 years ago that everyone was forced to stay home, right? Like, you can have any opinion you want of COVID, but when someone told you you weren't allowed to leave the house, guess what? You stayed home and you got paid to stay home. And it didn't matter what your belief was, you were forced and everyone accepted it. So, these things it's almost like they're a little test for what the future may hold. The point being that government in accordance with corporation will fill that vacuum, because they do have enough data and they do have enough touch points that they will be able to create an individual persona. And maybe they will say, well, you know what, we want to be able to help your community. We want to have these humanoid night watchers that are able to walk up and down the community. In fact, they're going to protect your community. But the only way to know, these night watchers need to know who lives in the community. So we need to go ahead, we need to make sure that we know, and again, we will never share this information with anyone, but we need to know who lives in the community, right? And we need to have we don't need their fingerprints, but, give us their driver's license. Okay, well, they could get the biometrics off the driver's license. Okay, great. Now, here's the thing that's scary. It's not a bad idea. I live in a 9-building apartment complex. If I believed that humanoid night watching robots were going to monitor my 9 buildings at 24/7 and make sure that I'm safe, and I believed that, then why wouldn't I? Oh yeah, here's my license. This is my face. Just make sure that the robots don't kill me, right? Why wouldn't I? That makes all the sense in the world. The thing is, these things make sense. The problem is, who has the power? Because absolute power corrupts absolutely. So do you want the government and the corporation being the one to tell you what your persona is? Do you want them to tell you what you're supposed to do, what you're supposed to like, where you're supposed to be, and why you're not supposed to be there? Or do you want a seat at that table? Do you want a seat at that table? The only way to have a seat at that table is to know that the table is going to exist. The only way to know that table is going to exist is to be able to look forward today. To look forward today says, all right, that table is going to exist. And the importance of that table to interact with these things is going to be a universal function that allows me to represent myself. I own it. This is me. How do I do that? Scale it back, scale it back. That is what the TED algorithm is. That is what the intent score is. In fact, in the patent says nothing about consciousness card. It says nothing about TED card, because we don't want to say that out loud. But to get the TED card, you would need to create the algorithm that we built. All right, Ant, there's going to be other smarter people. They could do this too. Sure, have fun with it. But in our patent isn't just the calculation. It's the actual levels and how they interact with each other. And our levels are kind of broad-based, where it has different levels of behavioral science, from meta learning to intent to a lot, meaning that their algorithm is going to have to be outside of that. And I got to tell you something, if you're going to predict the way someone behaves, well, you better be able to calculate behavioral science. And if we patented the calculation of behavioral science, well, then poo-poo, you're not going to be able to compete with us. Okay. Therefore, on an immediate level, do I think that what we have far exceeds anything that's in market right now? Yes. Do I believe that as TED shifts from recommendations to autonomy, that that's going to be in front of and far exceed everything that exists? Yes. Do I believe at some future date where that centralized ability for a human, for you, Deborah, Brian, Andrew, or whoever's on this call, to be able to own their own identity and control their identity and who they are is going to be valuable? Because it's not that, see, it's not that, well, if you don't have this, well, you'll figure it out. This is something that takes time to make. The problem is when corporations and government get to the point that they want to then scale their offerings, the only thing that's going to be left to that as a hurdle for their scalability is what we're talking about now, which means, do you believe that you have to believe one of two things? Either corporations and governments are going to say, hey, I know we have all this data and you have data and we have data. Rather than us getting together and creating this thing right now, because we don't know more about them than they do. We do not want that type of control over our people. Definitely not. We're going to try to think up something that the people can do themselves. Then we're going to nurture them doing it. We're going to allow them to build it. We're going to allow them to own it. And then at a later date, we're going to have a partnership with them. Because if you think that's going to happen, then you should just, I don't want to say anything, but there's a guy named Charles Darwin, and he would say that you should not continue participating in the gene pool. Because if that's what you believe, what's more likely to happen is that they'll say, okay, we need this. Hey, government, these are your people, right? You've kind of been trying to control them anyway, tax revenue, this, that, and the third. We have these really great things. They're safe. Everyone has them. Because here's the thing, by the time these things are brought out into some mass fashion, they're not going to be like invented overnight. Everyone's going to have their own thing at home. So for instance, say you have an AI puppy, right? You love your AI puppy. Your AI puppy is the best puppy ever. Okay, great. Well, that's not a good example, because why would people have mass AI puppies? Say you have a girlfriend, a wife, a husband. You have a humanoid that you're dating. Okay, great. So everyone has a particular AI, or the people that want it, and it could be a maid, it could be whatever. But you have something that operates within your home, like Jane in the Jetsons. Okay, was it Jane? I don't know, whoever the robot was. Maybe Jane was the wife, but whatever, the robot. Well, if everyone's comfortable with it, well, why can't that same thing be, I don't know, the nighttime maintenance worker of the park, right? Like, why can't that stuff happen? Well, it can. The only thing that would stop it is the fact that it can't engage with everyone, because I'm different than you, different than you, different than you. The reason why we have these things at home is because we personally train them. The reason why you can't have them outside is because they would not know how to engage with each individual. The only way to answer that question would be, hey, listen, we have all this data, we have these cameras, we have driving records, we have DMV records, we have criminal records, we have all this stuff. I know everything they've been buying on Amazon. I know everything they've been buying on Walmart. I know everything they've been buying at Target. They order their food through the Acme app, blah, blah, blah. Let's all get together, create a persona for each individual. Now we can have these mass scaled and everyone could be happy. And I can make that sound really good, because I actually think that's a good thing. The problem is, who owns the data? Who has the power? The service that I just shared with you sounds fantastic. I would love that. But I don't want someone telling me what I'm supposed to like. I don't want to walk around and be like, oh, you know what? That robot the other day treated me in a way that was really uncomfortable. I wonder what their algorithm is. I wonder what they think of me. I'm going to stay away from that one because it's a robot. I don't want to get shot. And, do I think these robots are going to like, oh, yeah, we didn't see anything. He was just dead. High five, right? Like, I don't want that. And again, I'm being a little silly, and we're talking about a far out world. Jane was George Jetson's wife. Rosie was the robot. Okay, Rosie. The point being, there is going to be a moment in time that an individual having the ability to have a universal method that is exactly their identity is going to be valuable. The problem is when that moment comes, there's going to be an alternative that's going to be offered because you do not have that. What the TED algorithm really is filling that in, knowing that at a later date, that's going to be, I don't want to say it out loud, saves humanity, right? So all of the things from here to there are profitable, great, blah, blah, blah. But the real function of what we're doing is actually seeing a fork in the road and deciding to choose humanity. And that needs to be a decision that's made now. And it doesn't change anything we're doing. Like for us to even be able to grasp that or have that is that we have to do everything that we're doing successfully. If TED is unable to make recommendations or TED's autonomous nature is not successful, then that thing doesn't actually exist. It doesn't work, which means we have to do everything we're doing anyway. Here's the fun part. Robin Williams, I gotta watch that movie, Bicentennial. I've never actually watched it. But here's the fun part of everything that I just spoke of. Most of the time when we get together, it is visionary stuff and service related. We're working on this, we're working on that, we're going to get this. We're no real income plan, right? Like, I don't think we've ever actually done anything to make income, which is not good when you're investing in a company, but it is good if you're the founder of a company and you just want to get to a certain point, right? Like, what people don't understand about me is that money is not something that goes in my pocket. Money is something that buys me time because I need time to get where I need to go. I could give an SHIT about any money. I care about the goal, and the goal, when we get there, releases all the money to everyone. That's how my mind and calculation works. Because if we don't get to where we're going, or we decide to take a shortcut, or we decide not to get where we want to go, well, then the money is going to be short-lived anyway, because someone smarter is going to do what we didn't do. And I'm not going to die one day saying, oh, I really wish I just kept going instead of taking the shortcut, right? Like, that's not me. Okay. What's cool about where we are now, though, is that we have a thing called a patent. The patent actually has a value because everything that we've just described is defensible by us with the non-provisional, not with the provisional, with the non-provisional. We don't have that yet, but we will have that. And if the patent office at any point says, oh, well, we can't offer you this because you need to change this, this, and this, well, guess what? We'll change this, this, and this. You see, when you're submitting or applying for a patent, you're not back at zero. So for instance, it's like dating someone in the sense that like you have a 5-year relationship with them and then you're like, well, I never told you, but I hate how you pick your nose and I need you to stop picking your nose. It doesn't mean you go back into the dating pool. It doesn't mean like, oh, okay, now they're going to pick someone new. No, they're working with you. There could be a ton of other people that are far more qualified than you, that look better, they're more handsome, they have more money. It doesn't matter. They came after you. You're the person that told you to stop picking your nose. If you stop picking your nose, is going to continue the relationship with you because you were there. That's a patent. We already have our flag in the ground. Anything that they say to us, well, I need you to change this, this, and this, we can change it in the moment, and then we acquire and get awarded our actual patent. Our patent team is still employed by us. They're the ones that get contacted. They're on a lifelong retainership until we get it awarded, which means the patent office directly contacts them and says, hey, listen, you need to do this. They contact us and say, hey, listen, they gave us this option. what would you like to do? Because if we do this, we'll get the patent. And you know what it says? What I say? Let's do it. Right? So we're going to get it, although I can't make any guarantee or whatnot. Like, and that's, I think we're reasonable adults. I think we understand that. Okay, but what's it worth right now? In fact, as it stands right now, and I've done a whole bunch of different calculations, I've sought independent appraisals, I've done our own appraisals. The clearest cut number that I have is between 300 and 450 million dollars. Seems to be where we are. Okay, so what does that actually mean, though? Like, it's not like I can, hey, let me take this piece of the patent and use this to pay my rent. Like, that doesn't work. It's about monetizing it, which means you'd have to raise money on it. Okay. Well, to raise money, you're not just going to raise money on a patent. Hey, I have this. I want to raise. You got to build a business around it. I spoke to someone the other day that says, Ant, don't make the mistake of building a business on the fact that you believe you have a patent, because you could get knocked off at any point, and then you have to fight someone in court for 10 years to go ahead and say that it's really your patent, it's not theirs, you need it back, blah, blah, blah. I go, that's not what I'm going to do. We're going to build a business around it. Here's the thing. I don't think I'm ever going to have the law team that's going to be able to defend my patent against, big corporations or whatnot. You know who does have those law teams? Government. So how can we have a collective, a partnership with government? Well, not the national government. What about local government? Because here's the thing, and I'm going to kind of leave it here because I'm spending the next 2 weeks finalizing the business plan. This week I have to actually not work on this at all. I have to do court stuff nonstop because that's the life I live, and that's fine. It is what it is. Next week is when I'm going to be working on the business plan and finalizing it, because starting in February is where we're going to be doing that offering. Now, that offering is not something like, we're going to do it. Well, I guess we could do an online thing just to share with people, but it's going to be much more formalized. It's going to be going through banks. It's going to be raising money in a real way, 10 million, 20 million, 30 million. It's going to get back to my Wall Street days, right? Like, that's what we need. We need real money. I want real money. I want 10, 20, 30 million dollars in our bank account. What we've done so far got us to where we are. Where we're going, I want that. And we finally have what we need to get that. So we'll get there. But in terms of the business plan, when you think about local government, you're going to have the haves and have-nots. You're going to have the people that have businesses, and you're going to have the people that go out of business. And the employment of local government is going to continually decrease as the AI is able to increase its ability to do tasks, which means you have unemployment moving up, you have revenue moving down, because you're going to have less functional businesses, because there'll just be less businesses overall, because some will go out of business. And the ones that do stay in business are going to be ones that's smart enough to be able to implement the AI quicker than everyone else and just kind of come into a whole lot, which means the wealth divide is going to expand even further. Okay. Well, it would behoove a local government that lives on tax receipts to have many bountiful businesses. In fact, one could even say that the money they would use for unemployment would be far better to go into some type of, local collective where the individuals in that collective are being trained in these practices, and they're accountable to the local businesses to ensure that everyone is operating at the highest standard, if not moving forward. I'm not going to get into too much what that looks like, but I do believe there is a very, very reasonable calculation that employs 100% of a local community. That 100% would be divvied between those that are already in business, those that already have jobs, plus those that are recently unemployed, being repurposed to support those businesses that are already in business or want to be in business in upgrading to the level they need to operate going forward, which means those individuals will be trained at all the latest tech and in such a regularity that now they're valuable as almost the engine of the community, because no matter who's in business, they're able to contact this new department and say, hey, listen, I want to get in business and sell this. Can you help me? And they can, because this is what they do. There is a model that we're working on that supports that. More so, what you would have seen in the numbers that we sent out is that the average person spent $5,500 last year on e-commerce. Now, if you remember Rhino Streets and everything else, it's always been of the belief that in your own home, you're making purchases outside of your community in lieu of knowing what your community even has to offer. So if a whole community has TED and TED is connected to Rhino Street, which means all of the back end marketplace is the local community, can at least 10% of that 5,500 be kept home? Because if that's the case, on a 10,000 person community, you're now looking at, I believe, well, then when you do the multiplier effect, which is 2.89 at level 6, what does that mean? If I have $100 and I spend it in my local community, 0.59% of it stays and gets respent in the local community. And when you do 0.59% times 6 levels, you get that initial $100 got circulated around that community at a level of $289. That's the multiplier effect of local community. So if you keep 10% of that e-commerce home on a 10,000 person community, that equals 12.89 million of new circulated money within that local community, which equals how much tax revenue, right? Which equals how much of a thriving economy, which actually equals the renaissance of Main Street that we've always wanted. Well, how does a community do that? Well, you have to give them all TED. You can't go person to person. Do you want TED? No, you go to the community level, the local government level. The offer being, hey, listen, we're not looking to make a ton of money on you. We're going to support TED. We're going to upgrade TED. We're going to train you on TED. We're going to give you TED. This is TED. We're going to work with you on what it actually is, make sure that you like it, we like it, whatever. You're going to pay cost plus 5%. What we believe by 2026 is that the cost per person with a regular usage of TED is going to equal $10 a month, which equals $120 for the year. On a 10,000 person community, that equals 1.2 million a year that the community is going to have to spend for TED. 5% equals $60,000, so $1.26 million to that community. On that same number, if the community is investing 1.26 million, and at the same exact time they're increasing their receipts, their local receipts, 12.89 million, does that make sense for the community to do? The answer becomes yes. Therefore, if any other corporation thinks that they're going to walk into that community and use any technology that's similar to TED, hey, community, we own the patents. We can't defend it against Walmart, but you know who could? You can. You're the mayor. You're the justice system. You're the superior court. You're the municipal court. Go do your fucking job. The point being, there is a collective that we can either spearhead or we can fall behind. And I think that's where we are. I think there's a very real way. And again, there's a lot more to what we've built than exactly what I'm just sharing. And it's not that I'm holding it back, but there's a social media aspect to it. There's a way people communicate with each other. There's warning systems. There's a whole bunch that keep in a community. So basically the goal of Rhino Street was always, can we silo a community, allow them to protect themselves, be a collective, and interact with the outside on a unified basis? Could you unionize population? This does that. We're there. So now what it takes is that we just have to complete it. We need to complete the business of it, complete the model of it, raise the money, not worry about money for the next 2 years, do a beta test within our own community, my community, Freehold, New Jersey. 2025 is going to be the beta. We're going to make it in such a way that it's palpable and scalable to any municipality anywhere. We'll launch it in 2026, look to take on new clients. And then 2027 becomes an interesting year because that becomes where the election season is for mayor of this town. I can promise you that my experience with family court is quite the platform that any individual would say, yeah, there is some things that need to be changed. So this guy is speaking to us from a political platform that we've all, tell me one person here that either hasn't been divorced or knows someone that's been divorced that has a really poor experience about how unfair it was. All right, he's speaking to that, and he's the same person that created TED. And guess what TED is? TED is exactly what we tell TED to be. There will be something in TED that does, TED will be Okay, the creator of TED is running for mayor. Ted endorses the creator. Everyone knows who he is anyway. Look at what he just did. You know, it's California rushed gold, Texas struck oil, Freehold met Ted, have you, right? There is a bigger picture to this. And then if all of a sudden the founder of TED is in political office in a municipality at the same exact time that he's scaling something and growing it to all the municipalities to show them this is how we did it, do you want it too? The point is, there's a lot ahead of us. And if anyone for even a second believes that we're not going to accomplish it, they're cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. So getting back to Rhino Bucks. Rhino Bucks was built perfectly. But it was dependent on growing a base. The base would grow to such a point at some point that it was just scalable, that the base was large enough that irrespective of any 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 or 20 individuals that made any type of withdrawals, that the constant contribution of the long base, kind of like the Social Security system, would propel it higher in a scalable fashion that would always exponentiate. Welcome divorce into my life. The time that I had to spend got greatly diminished, which meant the base decrease rather than increase. That decrease in base at the same exact time 1 or 2 people found themselves on their deathbed really wasn't good for Rhino. Add to that February, Binance no longer supports BUSD, which meant we'd have to tell everyone, hey guys, sell all your Rhino, take the money, and then send it back in for this new crypto we're working on, which I can promise you would have made sure that 1 or 2 people made all the money, everyone else would have got effed, which is something that I'm never going to allow. In fact, even sharing that point of view, I've spoken to people that say, yeah, I've been watching it. I was wondering what you were going to do. If there wasn't something done by the end of January, I was going to pull my own money, which meant there were smart enough people out there that would have crashed the market just by being smart. What we're doing, I can promise you, I can assure you, regardless, like if you want to find something to be upset about, if you squint hard enough, I'm sure you could find things. And that's fine. That's a personal thing. Whether you're upset at me or not, I'm going to still do the same exact thing. And if it means that I hand you money while you tell me that you don't like me, I don't care. I'm going to make sure that everyone does well. And if it means that I have to begrudgingly hand it to you, so be it. The point being, though, where we're going is much larger than where everyone ever maybe gave credit for. Like I've always said we're going to get to this place, and I always knew we were going to get there. I just had no idea how. I just knew me, and that I wasn't going to ever accept anything less, and that no matter what, any new thing that came in, I was going to be able to redirect it, reprioritize it, reposition the energy to go where we need to go. And we're going to get there, and everything's going to be fine. As for specifics, Anthony, what about this? What about, I don't know that stuff. I just know that I will make sure that everyone's okay and that the money is going to be there because we actually own something that actually has a real value actually right now. Provisional patents have money. The one that we have is worth $300 to $450 million. Anthony, go monetize it. I'm not selling it. Like you couldn't bait me into doing it. Well, Ann, wouldn't you like to have 300 million in your bank account? No, actually I wouldn't. If it meant that I sold everything that I ever wanted to do and I just sat there on an island with 300 million, I'd rather kill myself. I just wouldn't do it. We're going to get where we need to go. So the goal is that by April, I intend to double. Let me rephrase this. The money you've ever put in Rhino Bucks is worth 0. I recognize what you lost. I personally don't feel good about it. Therefore, I'm personally looking at the money you lost, and I'm personally looking to offer you twice the money you lost out of the friendship of me loving you. And in doing so, to say sorry, I want to also offer you a piece of the patent, which is commensurate. Can't say that. A piece of the patent that I believe you deserve, that I want to give to you as well, personally. If you allow me to just ride with that sentence for a little bit, I really believe everyone's going to be quite pleased. So this week, I can't do anything. I'm just court stuff. I have to prepare for appeals, and I haven't seen my children in 135 days. right? And I'm not allowed to speak about anything more of it. Like so don't ask, don't say anything. I know everyone wants to say, Anthony, I feel bad for you, and I'm sorry. And I appreciate it and I feel it. I just can't speak on it. Otherwise, I'm going to jail, right? So I can't speak on it. But I need to spend this week doing that stuff. But next week, I already have for doing all the stuff that I'm speaking of. Because what I do when I wake up at 2 in the morning isn't sit around and twiddle my thumbs. Those first 3-4 hours is in deep thought mode, writing things on whiteboards, collecting, collecting, and collecting. So when I say next week I'm going to get to it, it's not like, okay, now I'm just going to sit there and like figure it out. No, I'm going to organize all of the thoughts that I already had, put them in a fashion, and now build it out, right? So that's our meeting for today. I'm going to post this on the YouTube. I'm not going to cut any of it. I don't think I said anything that's going to get me in trouble purposely. There's a couple of, well, I guess I don't need to identify who I'm trying not to get in trouble with. That would probably be putting a bullseye on stuff. We're not going to have a call next week. We're going to have a call the following week. So 2 weeks from today, because after those 2 weeks, I would have had a full week of doing what we need to do. The goal is that by our next week, the call, that's going to be January 29th, so 14 days from today, I will have the offering completed. Everyone's going to know what the business looks like. In which case I can share it, we can walk through it, we could all understand it, and then the following 2 months, February and March, is Anthony just being Wall Street Anthony. Anthony's going to go raise 10, 20, $30 million. And when Anthony raises that money, he's going to make sure that everyone on this call and everyone that's ever known Anthony is pleased that they have known and want to continue knowing Anthony. And once we get to that point, then we could all high five and say, let's go. The future's about to look like the future. So that's where we're at. No, my pleasure. Listen, for better or worse, I'm never going to think about how someone's going to perceive what I say. I just don't. I will deliver good news and bad news all in the same way. And I will make hard decisions, because the reason why people don't make hard decisions is that they don't want to upset people. Oh, if I say that, they'll be mad at me. Well, if you don't say it, in 2 weeks from now, you're going to like blow everything up. I'll get to that when I get to it. No, I don't live that way. If you want to hate me, I'm okay with it. Many other people have hated me, and that's fine. I'm just never going to do anything that ethically or morally allows me to believe that I deserve to be hated. If somebody wants to hate me because they don't like the news I gave them, so be it. It's not going to change how I act. It's not going to change what I do. In fact, I'm still going to go to that person. I'm going to take all of the money, shove it in their pocket, smack them in the butt and say, there you go, buddy. Am I allowed to say that? A pat in the bum, maybe? I don't know. I guess as long as I don't put an actual name to it, I'm allowed to say smack in the butt. I don't know. But if you don't want to be smacked in the butt, stand 6 feet from me. All right. I do love y'all. I really, really do. I'm not taking many calls, doing many emails. I'm just in work mode. I really, really am. But like I've said to everyone, and I will continue to say it, if it's life or death for the fate of the universe, I'm always here for you. Always, 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 always. So if it's something like, and I do need you right now, the answer is yes. Short of that, just, not to quote one person, and he's on, so he knows exactly what I'm going to say. So, Ant, you want me to just STF you and back off? I would never say that out loud, but just, relax. And that's not to that person. It's just to share with you on a one-on-one what was believed that I wanted, right? So love you all. I'm going to post this, and I will see you again in 14 days.